Hello, everybody. Welcome to Before the Commit, episode 15. This week, we're going to be talking about autonomous vehicles, particularly in self-driving cars. We're also going to mention in the Killam chain interesting tool called Kawaii GPT, LLM specifically designed for black hat type operations. And of course, we'll hit news or noise and talk a little bit about the price drop that Anthropic announced this week with its 4.5 model for coding. With me, as usual, I have my friend Dustin Hillgartner. Hey, Dustin, how's it going?
Hello.
So yeah, before we get into the self-driving cars, I know I sent you the article earlier this week about Anthropic released Opus 4.5, which is their coding model. Sonnet had been out for a while. But with this announcement, they, announced a price decrease in their enterprise pricing, if you will. So yeah, the article says Anthropic has launched Claude Opus 4.5 with a 67% price cut that repositions its flagship model from a boutique offering to production-ready enterprise tool. The new pricing of $5 per million input tokens and 25 per million output tokens, down from 15 and 75, brings Anthropic closer to OpenAI and Google while maintaining a premium position. And of course, this week, Google also released Gemini 3 and a bunch of coding tools. And OpenAI launched GPT 5.1. So things are moving at a breakneck speed, and they're cheaper and cheaper.
Yeah. I think that certainly it's welcomed because I use Claude models more than anything with coding. But I think this is an answer to the fact that if you've been watching the market, it's kind of like Claude started off with the niche of coding, and the other models had other niches that they were more interested in going after first. And then there was talks about bubbles, etc. And it seemed like all around that time, everyone was kind of getting interested in coding. I think those of us that are in coding know that anyone who's doing AI coding at a very sophisticated level is spending hundreds of dollars a month on this right now. There's clearly a big market behind it. And I don't think anybody has any intention of scaling that back. I mean, the tools they're getting are solid and they're worth the money. They're creating incredible productivity increases. So I think that, say what you will about other markets maybe being soft, I think the software engineering market is about as hard as you can get in terms of, I don't think that that's going to disappear in a recession. At least that's my perspective from my own personal use. I think I would continue purchasing those models even during a recession. And I think companies probably would as well if they're getting the productivity increases that you get with them that I'm seeing. So I think that's probably why a lot of companies are moving in that direction and going into that market. That's, I think, the first gusher, the one that's paying off. I think also I've heard that like call centers and like support area might be also a gusher. So people are moving into that area.
Yeah, I would suspect anywhere where you're consuming a large amount of tokens. Like, I think we've talked here, we definitely have talked here multiple times around the value of an LLM is not when you're typing in a chatbot. It's when you can execute a bunch of background tasks or many tool calls where you're consuming large amounts of tokens. Because, that million tokens in or whatever million tokens out, like, it's easy to quantify what the out might be when you're looking at the end result. But when you're making tool calls, like, and there's, 10, 15, 20 tool calls, every single one of those prompts that comes back and goes forward is included in that token consumption. So I would suspect that anywhere you can create lots of back and forth, like bi-directional communication, or you're kicking off an agentic sort of process, you're going to see a lot of kind of these LLM companies driving people toward those avenues, like say browser or shopping, or like you
Mhm.
said, whatever, stuff for school, students, using it for, whatever have you, research, call centers.
And that's why, and that's why, at least in my opinion, you have these competing narratives with, some folks saying AI bubble, some folks saying, long term, this is really big. And I think that maybe they're both right to some extent, because I think that there's a bubble, there's bubbles, there's downturns before you go up. But at least in my opinion, if I look at my own usage and what the productivity I get from it, and then I've seen it go from a chatbot that I use occasionally to ask questions to, and I think everyone's in that mode to some extent, to a AI agent that is taking actions and I can delegate tasks to, of pretty high sophistication, including major coding tasks, et cetera. And then with that evolution from chatbot to AI agent, the token usage just explodes exponentially, because now instead of me asking a question and getting a response back, and that's input and then output, I'm asking it to do a task, and that is becoming thousands of inputs and output tokens over the course of many, many transactions. So what used to be a research project you would do and maybe add up to tens of thousands or 20 or maybe even 100,000 tokens, now you're easily hitting millions and millions and millions and millions of tokens every month. Um,
Yeah,
so
I think about like a year ago when we were coding by copying and pasting,
mhm.
and like you were limited to like, the speed of which you could copy paste, and
I
making
literally
sure
could use it
that,
all day, every day, and never spend a lot of money. But
well,
now,
the other thing too is token limits. Like you were somewhat hamstrung by how much you could copy and paste, and what, like say ChatGPT would limit you like 1,024 tokens, or
mhm,
whatever, 16,000 tokens, like on the more advanced models. And now you're talking about consuming millions of tokens in perhaps, minutes, and
yeah.
and then the cost also being driven down.
But the key point here is that the productivity increase you get when you go from regular back and forth conversation with a chatbot to an agentic application built for your job and wired into the tools properly, et cetera, like a solid application, a solid agent, you'll call it, right? The productivity increase you get is exponential compared to copying and pasting from the chatbot, but the
Yeah.
token usage is also exponential.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think that's
that,
the point.
yeah. So when people say, "Oh, this is all a fad," it's like, no, 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 no. These data centers will be used. I think, in my opinion, when they build these massive data centers, they will be used. Barring some sort of like genius comes up with a way of like, you know, making us all figure out how to do the 70-watt brain tomorrow. But barring that, which I don't think is going to happen until we get to a true downturn where efficiency becomes key, I think right now the tokens are going to explode. And I think when you saw Nvidia come back with their earnings not too long ago, um, it showed that at least they
Yeah.
don't see an end in sight to the growth. And I kind of trust that. I believe that, because based on my own usage, I don't see an end to the growth. I'm already trying to
Yeah,
figure
but
out
are
how I
you
can
are you
do
an
4 projects at once instead of 3, or something like that.
yeah, and I don't like to use this term, but are you an early adopter? Like,
Oh yeah,
are
of course.
you somebody on the bleeding edge, and like the
Yeah.
market, like my philosophy is that the market is way ahead of its skis. I agree with you that the compute will be used, but I
Mhm.
worry that there's not widespread adoption of the technology. I do believe that there's a market delay here in terms of large businesses like knowing how to use the technology, and of course like the
Mhm.
second era or the second level of maturity, which is using it securely, and the
Mhm.
fact that your engineers are using it already, like, if you aren't giving it to them, they're doing it
Yeah.
anyway. But like the real way that these companies will be able to get returns on their investment and like pay back, whatever loans they have or whatever investors have put money forward, like this overinflated market will not be able to reconcile itself unless you have widespread adoption of, whatever technology. Forget AI coding. Like that's a
Yeah.
niche market right now. When it
Mhm.
becomes an unniche market, or there are other tools out there, your average everyday consumer is not going to be the one that reconciles this. There's too many free tools. So it's going to be enterprise type operations or research centers that are really going to be the ones, like, kind of getting into heavy token consumption.
I mean, I I've gone back and forth on how quickly I think that some of this will happen, but I'm starting to think it's going to happen, quicker than, you know, it's going to take longer than most people expected in the beginning, but it's not going to be as long as people expect now. I think that what we're waiting for is not some sort of technological boom or some sort of model to come out that hasn't come out yet. What you're waiting for is the people in their basement working right now to get their tools dialed in and their agent ready and launch it and do the go-to-market strategy and talk to people. I think that the amazing things that all these other industries will get that will show them the productivity increases that engineers are having right now are single digit, I think a year at most away. I think you're going to start seeing them throughout 2026 coming out. You're going to start getting more and more applications launching that are helping out people in tasks in non-engineering businesses, with the anything information or knowledge based is going to be getting tools that greatly enhance their productivity and also
Yeah.
greatly enhance their token usage.
Yeah, I
And
think there's like a middle market here that is probably the thing that bridges the gap, because going from where you are to, dropping straight down into, like, using Claude in an IDE, or, at the terminal level, is an awfully large leap. And I
mm,
think that there's like, and we see some of these platforms that are out there, but I believe that some people need a crutch or some, I agree with you. I think whatever we thought might be the timelines for this is a lot shorter than I think we expect. And I agree. I think 2026 will be kind of, I do expect there to be some market corrections and a series of downturns for, expectations. But I do think, like, in the long run, this stuff does have a lot of legs. And I do think that there's other applications outside of coding that help this
mm.
thing along. It's not going to be coding that saves the day. It's a piece of the puzzle. It could be appliances, it could be wearables. It could even be like, I think the real value is the utility cost, right? This becomes like, paying your electric bill, it becomes paying your phone bill. You pay, an AI tax, if you will,
Mm.
which is not a tax, but it's part of your, operating, like an electric bill, like any other thing. It might even be sold by your electric company,
Oh,
where it's
100%. I
it's
believe.
rolled into it, and like you're paying for your robots and your whatever.
I think your analogy is correct. I've heard that before, and I agree with it. That what we consider, we talk about tokens, AI, et cetera. What we consider tokens or the unit of measurement of getting this AI supplied, and it'll start to make more sense once you have agents built on top of it, and we're less and less talking about open AI every day, and now we're starting to talk about how much money open AI is making supplying this intelligence for all these other applications, which are companies that are not yet in existence or in their incubator stage right now. Is that OpenAI, Anthropic, all these other companies are going to be almost like utility companies in the sense that they're going to be supplying almost similar to like an internet service provider or a
Mhm.
electrical company. And I've already observed this before. When something goes down, it's like when you have a part of your process that relies so much on AI, and you have some sort of really intelligent pipeline being done with AI, and you're used to the breakneck speeds that it goes at, and then that AI either gets dumber for some reason, like they're throttling it back behind the scenes, or it goes down entirely. It's like an intelligence outage. It's like you can still get the job done, but
Yeah.
you can't do it as fast. It requires you to put
Yeah.
humans on it now.
Yeah.
So it's this weird kind of outage that's different than an electrical outage. You know,
Yeah, it's an interesting segue into the
mhm,
next topic, which is, we have now, you know, a future where, vehicles are autonomous. We're living
mhm,
in an era now where, some vehicles are still human driven. A majority, I'll say majority of them are, a greater majority, and a minority of them that are capable of being autonomous. And then some people who have already adopted, whether they are an owner of an autonomous vehicle or they take a ride in an autonomous vehicle. That could be a Waymo, or it could be the new robotaxi feature of your Tesla, which is the ability to basically let somebody else use your car for a ride, which is pretty
mhm.
cool. And I suspect, the whole ride sharing market might change over time. I'm not too read into like freight. I know that some of the train monorail systems are semi-autonomous, meaning they run on a schedule and they're somewhat intelligent. So yeah, you're much more of an expert. This is kind of like a special Thanksgiving episode where we're not really talking about the tool of the week is a self-driving car. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Well, it's kind of a tool of the week. I mean, if you're a software engineer, you're probably within the next couple of years going to find yourself coding while you're in a car, and supposed to be the driver probably. Um, but
Coding, does that mean like you're talking to your agent or you're actually
I hope so. I hope so because that's all I do nowadays. Is I I don't type my code anymore. um, but in all seriousness, no. I mean, to bring it home to what we were saying, these tools like Claude Code and Cursor, et cetera, they're what are called agents, right? Which is really just the technical thing behind the scenes is you're talking to the LLM, but instead of answering trivia questions for you, you handed it a bag of tools, and it's able to say, "Hey, if I were you, I'd use this tool in this way," and then get me the response back, and then I'll share a little bit more about what I'll do next. And then at
yeah.
the end, if you create a loop in code with that, you get work done, right? And you wire it up to a whole bunch of APIs like your GitHub or whatever, and it starts to do things like create issues and all kinds of stuff, right? And if you really get that dialed in properly, you can do some things that are, the closest thing to magic that exists today. Anyone who's using Claude Code and doing coding, it's like having a magical friend, right? And
Yep.
then if you are in these AI agent cars, right, like Waymo or Tesla, or there's a whole host of other ones in other countries, and they're also popping up in the United States. Um, it's if you haven't experienced, it's just tantamount to magic, right? Um, Waymo, a lot of people have experienced. Tesla is another big company in the United States. Um, we'll go into some detail about both of those cars to give you an idea of how they're working, right? So Waymo is, I think, they're in like 5+ cities at this point. They are very sensor heavy. So they have a car that you can show it the first schematic. This is where they are currently. You have Waymo on their 5th generation. I'm actually not sure if this is potentially a little bit old, but so you'll have to correct me. But it's pretty much close to what they are today. Is you can see that Waymo has way more sensors and way more types of sensors. So they have radar, lidar, cameras. At the time of this image, 24 total cameras, radar and lidar. And then for Tesla, I know this is current, it's 8 cameras. Now, at a point in time in the past, Tesla had LiDAR. And what you have here is like 2 competing strategies where Tesla has abandoned all their other sensors and gone to just vision. And I think they also do sound too, to hear for emergency vehicles and stuff like that. And Waymo, of course, has the whole suite of sensors. And so they both have sort of a competing strategy. If you go to the next schematic, it kind of shows the difference in price. So I think the cheapest Tesla, or close to the cheapest Tesla, is around 37,000, and the Waymo, I believe the cost per Waymo is about 200,000. You can't, of course, buy a Waymo. You can buy the Tesla. So the Waymo strategy has, and this is coming, they're sort of an offshoot from, at one point, Google owned them and then spun them off. And they have quite a bit of investment in them. They've rolled out in a number of places. They've been hugely successful in California and in other locations. And they're, I think, expanding to 15 or 20 cities by the end of 2026. Also, I heard today they have a partnership with the Ionic cars, those the cool looking ones. So in 2026, you're going to start seeing the Ionic 5 or something like that as the Waymos, instead of the Jaguars. They've had, I think up until this point, they had mostly Jaguars.
I think Hyundai owns Ionic.
Yeah, it's the Hyundai partnership.
Yeah.
Then you have Tesla. So Waymo's been putting these cars out there, lots of sensors. They're mapping all the roads. They're geo-fenced. They really truly understand each city in full, high definition, multiple sensors, etc. And they've been sort of slow and methodical. You can imagine putting safety to like the extreme, right? With all the sensors, all the mapping, the geo-fenced, etc. Tesla's strategy has been a little bit different. What they did that was interesting was they went for like a data heavy, like they tried to accumulate as much data. Whereas I guess you could say Waymo does as well. They drive around in essentially like this massive sensor vehicle and they're mapping everything. So you could say that they have extreme amounts of data about smaller locations like a city. And then Tesla has been giving, has been selling these cars to millions of people. They have essentially, millions upon millions upon millions of cars throughout the world, driving around with 8 cameras, that's sending
and also
that
in
data.
different terrains. So like their ability to expand into other markets is a lot greater. Whereas Waymo has been, very, I would say, targeted cities where they could experiment. Cities have very similar type landscapes, similar type of traffic patterns.
Yeah, I mean, they're also the more difficult areas because of lots of pedestrians and things like that. So those are like the two interesting strategies. So Tesla has an enormous amounts of data because they have millions upon millions of cars out there. And Waymo has, I think, like, it's only like an order of like a handful of thousands of vehicles. And I think they're ramping up very quickly, but it's still like, it's, if I remember correctly, it's something like less than 5,000 vehicles. And I think even less than half of that. So the vehicles are very expensive and have lots of sensors. So their ramp up is a little bit slower. But if you look at the numbers on crashes and deaths, it's amazing. Like Waymo has 0 deaths, first of all. That's just, it's hard to argue with that. I think 150 million miles and they have 0 deaths. And they have, it's hard to really go on crashes for Waymo because Waymo's only in the cities, whereas like the national crash records are through the whole country. And obviously the cities have a lot more crashes, a lot of fender benders and stuff like that. But if you go by police blotters, they think that in the cities, it's an average of 4.68 crashes per million miles humans have. And Waymo has 2.1. So half that. I think Tesla, which has way more data, but you also got to remember that Waymo is completely autonomous. There's no steering wheel at all. Like they have, people on call center that can, come in and take over the car if necessary. But otherwise, it's completely autonomous. There's no driver, no steering wheel, etc. So with that comes a regulatory burden where I'm sure if they like tap another car, they have to report it to the government. So there's this idea that like their stats are, whereas if I tap another car, maybe we go, hey, let's not call the cops. So let's just take care of this ourselves. So it's hard to really say how many crashes humans get in, whereas every crash that Waymo's in, and they're half as much as what we know humans are based on police blotters, right?
Is that statistic of all crashes, or is that Tesla crashes?
That's Waymo. Just Waymo's half.
No. Right? The number that you quoted, the 4.6 per million, is that like all crashes, or is that
all crashes of humans driving in urban areas, according to police
So it's
reports.
irrespective of anything
irrespective
else.
of the car.
Okay.
I'm assuming it's just a police report of a crash.
And now, is that a specific city?
It's
or national average?
It's based on NCBI, NLM, NIH. So I guess it's national English study.
Yeah. National. Yep.
So I believe that's the UK, right? Anyway, I'll have to look up the stats and give you the exact source, but it's a government source. Now, Tesla, on the other hand, the reason why I'm saying that Waymo's fully autonomous, they have to report everything. Tesla's not fully autonomous yet. They have a steering wheel. They still are rated at a level 2 driver assist. Like when I use my Tesla and I put on self-driving, even though I could tell you that I don't need to take control of the car pretty much ever at this point. And when I say need to, it is never at this point. When I do take over the car, it's because like I don't want it to stop at a stop sign as long as it does, or something silly like that. And even that, you don't have to take over. You just gently push the gas pedal, and which is its own weird thing because you're kind of like co-driving with the car. You're kind of nudging it along, like I want you to go a little bit faster, but you still steer. It's an interesting phenomenon. But Tesla's numbers are way less than Waymo in terms of crashes. But I don't want you to read into that to be like, oh, wow, Tesla's so much better than Waymo. It's that Tesla, A, has a human behind the wheel, so the human can take over before a crash happens. So that is a leg up on a Waymo. And then B, when a Tesla crash happens, the human doesn't have to report it, right? So there's probably also less in that case. Whereas Waymo, I believe in every area they operate in, it's like, it's like HIPAA. You get in a crash, you got to report it. But Tesla's numbers are like 0.157 crashes per million miles. So they're like 13 times safer than a human. And then with FSD, it's similar. About 11 or 12 miles safer.
FSD?
Yeah. What's interesting, if you go from autopilot,
FSD? Sorry.
FSD is full self-driving. Autopilot is their like level 1, like it's almost like cruise control that keeps your lane type of thing, right? So it's interesting that like the number of crashes actually go up with autonomy, with the more driver assist, meaning not full driver assist. More driver assist, slightly like a nudge, which is what I found in the numbers is that the more the human is in control, the less it gets reported, or the more they can intervene and stop something. But when you go to full self-driving, you're still at like 13x safer than a human. And with Waymo it's 55% safer than a human. Now, of course, like I said, the Waymo reporting is ironclad because they have to report everything. Fatal crashes for Waymo, 0. And then with FSD Tesla, there's 2. Now, the stat that really kind of just blew my mind was the deaths, the fatalities, because Tesla has 6.5 billion miles and 2 deaths. According to the human stats, they should have had like 68 deaths. If they were matching a human. So, if these numbers are correct, there's, 66 people who are alive today that wouldn't be alive And with Waymo, they have 0 deaths over 150. They have less miles because they have less vehicles, 150 million miles. But still, that's a.
So you're saying that I should, no matter what I do, I should not buy a car and just take Waymos wherever I go, because I have 100% chance of living.
Yeah.
So
Except
move
for
to
they
a
may not
city
be
where
in
has
your city.
Waymos and
Yeah.
sell my
If you never
car.
leave
And
the city. If you
well,
never
yeah,
leave
just
the
don't leave
city.
the city. And if you do, don't, walk.
But the point is that these things will be everywhere, and then you could do that at one point. You could take.
Yeah.
But the other interesting thing is that the cars that now Tesla has recently in Austin has launched they're calling Robo Taxi, and it essentially is their stock car on the road, and now they have a driver in the passenger seat, which I think is what Waymo did when they first were testing themselves out early on, and they passed that stage. And now I guess Tesla's sort of following in their footsteps and going through that stage, if I'm not mistaken. So they have the safety driver in the passenger seat, with his hand hovering over a button that I'm sure probably stops the car. And it's been very successful in Austin from what I've heard so far in the videos. I mean, pretty much every driver is videotaping the whole
Cybercab.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the Cybercab is the steering wheel-less car that they will launch at some point in the future, that gold one. The Robo Taxi
Tesla
is
Robo
just
Taxi.
the Robo Taxi is just a stock Model Y, with I guess a software update that makes it a Robo Taxi.
Yeah. So is it true that you could, if you own a Tesla, that you could actually farm it out as a Robo Taxi, like to make money off of your vehicle?
That's what they say they're going to do.
Yeah. Like
So this
similar
is
to that
why,
company that lets people rent your car. I forget what the name of the thing was.
Like Turo
yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it.
So that's why I'm very excited about Tesla's rollout and their exponential ability to scale, is because what people don't realize is that the robo taxis that are on the road in Austin are no different than the ones that regular drivers are driving around on a daily basis. So if you're buying a Model Y today, a new one, then you're getting the same Model Y that's in the robo taxi. So hypothetically, with a software update, and they say they're going to do this, but as with anything with Elon and Tesla, you really don't know when it's going to happen. It could be months or years after they come up with the idea and announce that they're going to do it. They could say, "Hey, we're going to do something," and then 2 years go by and they do it.
Yeah.
And
like the Cybertruck took how many years?
yeah. So I don't know when, and nobody does, but that's what people are excited about, is the idea that in the future, if you have one of these autonomous cars, that you can go send your car to go pick someone up. Or what I'm excited about is if the cars charge themselves and can drive, then hypothetically you could go fly somewhere on an airplane and have your car meet you there and not have to rent the car. I mean, I'm sure it'd probably still be economical. It would be like horrible for your car. How many miles do you have in your Tesla? 24 million. Every single time I go to California, I drive my car there to pick me up at the airport. It's a horrible idea, but it's a cool thing to think about, that you could go send your car to go pick yourself.
Well, I think what could be cool is, like, instead of paying for parking at the airport, you have it meet
pick
you
yourself
at the
up from the airport.
Right? Yeah, like, so something like that I think is interesting. Not like, what you're saying. Or, I went out to eat and, I came with a bunch of friends. Instead of me calling an Uber, I'm just going to call my own car to meet me.
Exactly. That's what I'm excited about. And I can tell you right now, with a Tesla, because I own one, so I've been watching it evolve. When I first got the Tesla, probably 10 years ago, let's say, no, not 10 years ago, maybe 7 years ago, I would turn on autopilot occasionally. I would turn on FSD, I should say, occasionally as a novelty to show somebody, hey, look how cool this is. But I would turn it off shortly after, because it was like I would have to intervene like every 10 minutes. On the highway, it was pretty cool, but I would take the exit. when I got there. And then on the regular streets, it wouldn't even drive at all. And then when they turned that on, it was like it was a shit show. It was safe, but it was like, it would be like everyone behind you would hate you. Now it's a better driver than me, I would think. And what's funny is it has different modes. It has like chill mode where it'll kind of chill, and it has standard mode where it drives regular. And then it has hurry mode, which is exactly like me. That's how I drive usually. So I love that mode because it just does everything I would do. And nice. Then it has Mad Max mode, which I do not put it in because it's sometimes a little bit scary for me. It's not unsafe, but it drives like your teenager would when they first get their car, where they're switching lanes trying to get ahead in traffic. That kind of thing. But if you got to get to some place quick, then Mad Max will definitely try its hardest to get you there quick. But hurry mode is just the sweet spot for me. It's amazing. And, this kind of gets into the next topic I wanted to talk about, which is really kind of what got me going on this topic in the first place. Was there's something that not a lot of people are putting their finger on, but I'm starting to get a feel for it, is that these new types of applications, these new types of agents, because they are very human-like, because they're trained on human actions and they kind of mimic, I think Carpathia's called it or maybe it wasn't, I can't remember who it was, had called it like kind of an animal spirit of some sort, trying to mimic a human. There's a weird kind of, you gain trust for it faster than you normally would. And it has to do with the AI kind of shows its work to you a little bit. When, if you use an ATM and it works for you every day, right? You don't gain trust for it. You don't really trust an ATM. When ATM doesn't work, it's not like, it's just cold. It's like, it's just out, right? It's not working. And this is kind of hard to really explain. You kind of have to feel it. You kind of have to experience it yourself. But when you work with AI, especially chain of thought AI, where you're seeing how it's thinking and how it's approaching a problem, there's a trust level you start to gain through seeing how it operates. Similar to how if I were driving in a car that had a C++ algorithm, it wasn't machine learning or anything. It was just straight up code written by a bunch of if statements by someone at Microsoft in my car. And I was driving with it and it was going straight and it was on the highway. I'd be like, okay, here we go. And the moment it swerved, I'd be like, okay, we're shutting this off. I'm never touching this thing again. It's scary, right? But with the car, you start to, it's kind of like, your friend's driving and he's 100% great all the time. Your friend, his character, you grew up with them, and then he swerves one time. But you're like, hey, dude, don't do that again. But you still trust him, right? There's still a built up trust that you have over time. There's this weird concept with AI where you kind of build that trust up by seeing its thought process over time. Also, bugs are different. There's no traditional bug. Like in traditional programming, there's a bug, you just get to a brittle wall. Oh, it just can't, every single time I push this button, I get an error. There's no way around it, right? With AI, you don't run into those walls as much, because when you have not as much traditional programming and you have AI agents with tools and you're asking it to do its job, when it encounters a wall, it finds itself around it. Like today I had to go drive someplace, and this place has a non-traditional entrance. You have to go through a longer driveway, and there's a checkpoint where you have to show an ID and everything like that. And sometimes some of the entrances are closed and sometimes they're open. So when I take my autopilot, my car there, what's interesting is when it gets to an entrance and it sees the gate is closed, it'll just go, it just says, oh, the gate's closed, and it immediately starts driving to another entrance it thinks it can find on a map, right? And then when it gets there and it finds that entrance is open, then it goes in, right?
Feels like a little
And
bit of like a mouse trying to get to the cheese.
it's like it has this like adaptability to it where it's like, there's no traditional bug. Like it's trying to find a way. So then when it ultimately comes back to you and says, oh, listen, I couldn't find a way in, like it's not like this cold bug like the ATM didn't work. It says it's down. It's like, oh, okay, I see why it couldn't get in.
Would you,
And then you
you
have an
know,
opportunity to say, hey, why don't you try this? And then it takes the suggestion and goes and does
it
that.
reminds me a little bit of like penetration testing, like, or when you're trying to simulate an adversary, you know, and you're brute forcing something. Like you keep your goal, like you give it the instructions, your stated goal is to get on the inside. And so like normally a human being would, like, after a certain amount of hours, give up on a bug. Or like, oh, this entrance is closed, so you have to take your phone now and you have to like zoom in on the map and figure out, okay, where's the next gate, and you have to drive like back out the road and like around all the way to the other side. And it's like maybe another 15 minutes worth of driving. You're like, forget it, I'm going home.
Yeah, that, by the way, that was the craziest segue into Kill 'em Chain ever.
No, it wasn't segue. No, it wasn't. No.
It
But
was
now
like,
that you said it,
here's
like
the here's the
that would have been a good one to do. No,
that
I
was like
wasn't
the
trying to.
samurai chop.
I wasn't segue.
Let's cut this thread.
My segues are good. Come on, that was terrible. What are you talking about?
It's like penetration testing.
No. I mean, like the brute force part of it. It's like
Yeah.
human beings are innately not good at brute forcing. Like trying a series of password lists, like typing over and over again. A computer is good at that. It's good at
Yeah.
trying different combinations. That's what I thought of. I was not
Well, that's what we
transitioning.
have in common, because AI is pretty bad at that too. It's pretty bad at methodically going through like everything and not like getting distracted like a human and saying, you could be like, hey, I want you to do these 200 tasks, and it will do 12 of them and come back and say, I made progress. What should I do next?
Yeah.
And it's funny like that. But absolutely, it's like there's a thought process behind it. It'll try, when it finds a wall, it'll try to find its way around it. It operates based on intent and the tools it has, right? It's like, if I have tools that I could still use to accomplish the goal I'm doing, it doesn't just get to the first wall and say, oh, well, geez, that's too bad, I'm not programmed what to do next. It uses reasoning to try to figure out, hey, maybe I could drive around the other entrance I see on this map, and then it goes and does that. Now, it might not sound earth shattering, but there's lots of things like that. Like when a light is turning yellow and you're not yet up to it, you can feel the car go through this like thinking process where it's trying to decide whether it's going to go through the yellow or not. And which is very human-like. It's like if you're on the highway and you can see the yellow come up right when you're about to pass it, you kind of take your foot off the gas and you kind of coast for a second to say, am I going to go for it or not? So it does very human-like qualities like that. One time I was in the right-hand lane and the right-hand turn opens up to its new lane, and you usually try to get to the left. So if anyone's taking that right, they can squeeze in. The car does that, especially if the car's sneaking up behind and it looks like it's going around to the right. The car will be like, oh, he must be trying to get by, and we'll squeak over to the left. We were in the car one time and the ambulance came by and it pulled over, and we were both shocked.
Yep.
So it's
very
very interesting. I'm looking forward to the day where I can code in my car. That's what I want.
Well, you can. I mean, you just can't do it directly with the car.
Yeah, not yet.
You could have your laptop open on the seat and
I can get arrested.
Well, you don't have to look at the laptop. You just talk to the laptop. Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah,
I can just do voice recognition.
Hook up a USB button for your.
I'll do speech to speech with my code. I'll be like, see out.
Yeah. So now we can transition to the Kill 'em Chain.
I know I ruined your segue before.
I trust me. I would have owned that Segway if that's what it was.
Honestly, I wish we did segue because I didn't have anything good for the last couple minutes.
Oh yeah, well, we're there. So, yeah, so there's this free open source tool called Kawaii GPT,
Hmm.
and it basically, I mean, there's really not much to it. Like, I think where I wanted to focus on was the fact that how easy it is for somebody to create something that can easily embed a vulnerability. Like somebody that's using a tool like this, you want to build an exploit, you're trying to penetration test something, good, bad, you're security researcher, you can very quickly and I'm sure there's tons of tools like this. It's like this one just got caught some headlines.
Hmm.
Um, but what I wanted to point to was the fact that how simple it is for somebody to create something like this. And while this might be branded as a tool specifically for this type of building this type of application, right? Because that's all it is.
Hmm.
Um, how a well-intentioned person could be utilizing something like Claude um, uh, Gemini or Cursor or any other model and not even realize like that LLM might be giving them a backdoor or it might be embedding a backdoor. They're using some random LLM that we're not, aware of. Like they're using some Chinese or some, Russian LLM site. They accidentally typo squatted like Chat GPT and added like an additional character and they started copying and pasting code into something that's deployed into production. And my point was really around because the segments the kill 'em chain around how, you know, this could be part of your kill chain where you're embedding, a snippet of malicious code. I mean, I've written proof of concept models for a reverse shell that was a single line of code that was non-detectable by traditional reverse shell detectors because it just uses regular old HTTPS, right?
Hmm.
And it was embedded as obfuscated, supply chain code in a Node.js library that you couldn't scan for. So that's something that could happen very easily.
Yeah, and I had the same thought when I heard that like some of the like I think Cursor and other I can't I honestly I can't remember the company. I don't want to say Cursor, but there was some other company that was moving to like DeepSeek as one of their main models, right? Or Quen or something like that. And I think that's how it's pronounced. Uh, and it was like a Chinese based model. And I was like, that's well and great. I mean, people can go use whatever model they want.
Mhm.
But from my perspective, I was looking at it from the can people trust that in a national security type of situation? Right.
Sure.
And I don't think you can. In fact, maybe there's someone out there who can show me a paper for how they secure these models, right? Which I believe is probably they distill from the model. But I wonder how they quote unquote sanitize the model. I don't
Yeah.
think they can,
Well, there's a lot
now.
of you know, there's a lot of discussion right now about this. So like in a national security sense, like,
Mhm.
it would be, it has to be FedRAMP, right? It has to meet an impact level assessment if it's for DoD. It has to
Mhm.
be approved by an AO. And like the reality is that like all of this is risk mitigation. There is no panacea. Like security in general is about risk mitigation. There is
Yeah.
no way to fully secure something. You're just buying down, choosing how much risk you're willing, your risk appetite, if you will, and
Yeah.
what the potential loss might be as it relates to that risk appetite. On the flip side, there's an ongoing drafts right now with NIST around if I'm not sure if you're familiar with NIST 800-53, which is the risk management framework. It's a very commonly used framework that authorizing officials use for assessing risk for an information system. So whether it be,
Mhm.
doing FedRAMP or whatever have you, It's very intense. None of that covers artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
However, there's a new thing called AI RMF that is starting to explore some of the things that are in like the MITRE ATT&CK Atlas stuff, some of the stuff that, we talked about in,
Mhm.
earlier segments before we had the Killam chain, we had Secure Sus, and we would talk through the various different like threat models that were in the OWASP top 10 for LLMs.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say it's still in its infancy in terms of like an acceptable way to vet the risk of models, and it's solely a FedRAMP thing right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, DeepSeek I would say is probably not one of those that's allowed for national security.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean,
Yeah.
based on what I understand about how models work, I really doubt that you can totally understand what that model is going to do in every circumstance. Like there couldn't be like some sort of embedded, um, like you said, where it
I mean, could it
codes
could it
codes
exfiltrate?
perfectly 99% of the time until it finds this exact time where it's like this is the right time to slip in a virus. I have no idea that whether
Can an LLM decide to exfiltrate something?
absolutely. I mean, you could
Mhm.
build AI. If you said, could you code an AI to do something 99.99999% until it finds this exact moment, like I'm in the palace, and then it
Mhm.
does it?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, you can make AI do that. Um, now, now, is it is it easy to do that? I think that there's a level of sophistication to get to the point where that's ironclad, right? Like, because everything's probabilistic. It's kind of like if I say never, except for in the most excruciating circumstance, do this. There's certain pathways where it will go down there. You can engineer ways of fussing out those low percentage things by doing like adversarial type things. So maybe that's what they're doing is they hack it with another LLM to try to find out all the possibilities and then they audit it that way. But I mean, at that point, maybe it's close to distillation at that point. You're kind of just distilling the model and taking out the bad things. Um, I'm not sure what they do, honestly. I'd be very interested to understand what the science is behind securing a model like that, because maybe after I deep dive into it, maybe we can do that next segment. I'll deep dive into that. Maybe I'll come back and be like, you know what? I trust it.
Well, here's the thing, like, would you ever trust anything like that implicitly anyway? Like, I don't think you do. Like, you wouldn't trust that somebody wrote code
I mean, if the
securely.
science behind it is solid for how they're making it secure, then I would trust it.
Well,
Um,
I would say trust it, but also you wouldn't fully rely on that as your security process. Like, you would not just say, "Hey, this code is secure. It passed all the tests." You would say, "Hey, it was secure at the time we assessed it, and it was
mhm,
secure at the time we read this last attestation, but we're also going to add like an egress proxy so that in the event that something was missed,
mhm,
or somebody had hijacked, the development process, or somebody missed something, that
yeah.
you are still preventing from data being exfiltrated, or you're still doing input and output sanitization, or you're using an LLM proxy of some kind, or you are using guardrails, right? You're not just going to rely on the fact that somebody said the model was secure.
Part of what um, what's funny is part of what makes this difficult for an adversary to do is because of the reinforcement learning done at the end of the model that causes model collapse to very few possibilities for certain types of questions. It's the reason why you can't get like a never ending list of great jokes out of a model. It's probably going to give you 10 great jokes on a topic. And then when you ask it for more jokes on that topic, it's going to start repeating things. Um, the reason for that is because of the reinforcement steps. So that kind of secures you a little bit. But once they figure out how to put more entropy into these models so that they can get more of like a human like chaos to the thought process, to get more creative things out of it, then just like a human, you can embed things deep into their psyche. I imagine that you could probably embed things deep into an AI, where it's very hard for a researcher to try to suss out that
Mhm.
hidden identity or that hidden capability is deep in there. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I think that, like, what's interesting is there's a cat and mouse game between hackers and security professionals that have taken place on the internet. I think there's going to be a cat and mouse game in the whole world of AI, like deep into the AI. Like, there's going to be unlimited layers of sophistication within the AI where you can deeply
Yeah.
embed things. And I think that now it's not just cat and mouse on the internet, it's cat and mouse in the mind of the AI.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine that you even yeah, for sure. I mean, my point was around exactly what you're saying is that you should never fully rely on the trust of your model as your sole methodology for securing your processes for whatever your organization is that that is a piece of a puzzle, and you should always adopt a zero trust philosophy on how you secure your AI. So assume the worst case scenario, assume that your model has already been compromised and that people will use it maliciously, and then build
Mhm.
around that concept. So everything you're architecting in your enterprise should be around that sort of mindset. And that so if something does get compromised, you have some level of defense against a worst case scenario.
It makes me think of what Grok's strategy is, which is a mix of experts. So when you use Grok's most expensive
Mhm,
models, they all have different graphs behind the scenes of how they accomplish certain things. And
mhm,
by the way, all of them are kind of in their infancy of trying to it's like the Wild West of trying to figure out what the
mhm,
right graph is. So
mhm,
it starts off with the React graph where it's just tool calling, and that's where you started to get like deep research and stuff like that. And now you're
mhm,
all the way to sophisticated graphs with all kinds of dynamic nodes and all kinds of conditionals and incredible graphs. And I know that or at least at some point in the past, I'm not sure if they're still doing it, but I know Grok was using what's called a mixture of experts graph. So what that does is, and I think this is how they try to accomplish non-bias to the best that they can, is they basically set off like this idea of like multiple experts arguing with each other, and they try to come up with some form of like a consensus or some form of an idea. Like that might be an interesting security way of solving these problems with models, because you can have a quorum of models. Maybe you don't trust any individual model, but you trust them all as a quorum, you know.
mm, mhm.
Um,
Yeah,
and that might be a good way of burning away a Manchurian candidate, you know,
yep.
uh, because that one model is going to come out and be like, and say something crazy, and the other models are going to be like, "Whoa,
Yeah.
call the police!
Yeah, there's a
Tell them
lot,
about this."
yeah, yeah. You're giving me some crazy ideas right now. So yeah, before we close out, I just wanted to hit on another news article today. We talk here a lot of times about coding and, today we talked about cars, and security, but we've talked a little bit about, how AI plays a role in movies and music. And an interesting thing happened today where Time Warner signed a deal with Suno, which is the company that allows you to create music
Yeah.
using AI.
Mhm.
And they dropped their lawsuit and instead signed a deal with them. So pretty interesting how, I think we kind of called it like, the best way forward is for these to, you know, I mean, I don't know what that means for artists, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, I think if you're an artist and AI makes a song, like a good thing is, so I see all these songs that are like classic songs from the past, but maybe you don't listen to them anymore because, like when I was younger, I used to listen to a lot of Metallica, and there's a lot of angry songs because I
Mhm.
was, playing sports, and, I had lots of hormones going on probably or whatever. And I love those songs, but I can't listen to them when I'm older because I just like can't get into that just drums and everything. It's just I want something calmer, or want something, you know, with a different tone maybe. It's not often that I'm angry anymore. So usually you have music that matches whatever your mood is. Mostly I want to be in a mood that's good. So I can take old songs that I haven't ever listened to in years and I can like redo them in some other genre. Like a lot of people are taking old rap songs from like DMX or something and making them like 20s soul or something. And the result is amazing. Now, if DMX gets paid for that on every stream, why wouldn't he love that? He'd be like, this is great. I make my song that was a hit back in like God knows when is now top of the list again, right? So I think that that's awesome. And by the way, the music coming out of that is just amazing. Like I find myself listening to that, you know, I wouldn't say more, but I think what's missing is that the model collapse. The songs start to sound the same, you know, every 50s, 20, you're like, okay, 50s, 20s is cool, but you know, you need more variety. But once the entropy and the variety comes and all that kind of stuff starts to get better, and not only that, but people are prompting and coming up with new branches that they can go down that no one else thought they could go down. I think it's great. I honestly think it's great.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Pretty interesting stuff, and I suspect we'll see more of it in music, in movies, in science. In I saw today Google announced their weather service, DeepMind. You can use it for free. You can track historical hurricanes, and yeah, pretty interesting stuff. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. We'll be back next week. I think we're talking about securing models, something like that. Thanks for joining.
Thanks.